1:47 in the morning. That is the exact time the doorbell camera at Nancy Guthrie's home went dark on February 1st, 2026. Not a technical glitch. Not a power outage. Someone disconnected it. Someone standing at the front door of an 84-year-old woman's home in the Catalina Foothills of Tucson, Arizona, at 1:47 in the morning, deliberately disabled the camera that could have recorded what came next. 25 minutes later, at 2:12 in the morning, a different camera inside the home detected motion and classified it as a person. There is no recoverable video from that moment. Then, at 2:28 in the morning, the pacemaker inside Nancy Guthrie's chest separated from the iPhone it had been paired to. The phone stayed in the house. Nancy did not. That 41-minute window from 1:47 to 2:28 is the most critical period in the entire investigation. And after 31 days, it has not yet been explained by anyone in custody. This is where the investigation stands right now. A masked, armed individual captured on recovered doorbell footage. Blood confirmed to belong to Nancy found on the front porch. DNA from an unknown male, recovered from a glove found approximately 1.5 miles from her home, tested against over 26 million. Profiles in the FBI's national database, and returning 0 matches. A black 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack carried by the suspect, originally believed to have been purchased exclusively at Walmart. Now under new scrutiny after the sheriff acknowledged it may have been bought second-hand. A ring camera 2.5 miles away, capturing a vehicle moving through the darkness at 2:36 in the morning, 8 minutes after the pacemaker went silent, on a back road specifically designed to avoid major intersections and traffic cameras. And a sophisticated tracking device mounted on a helicopter, flying slow and low over the Arizona desert, listening for a signal that a small electronic device implanted near Nancy Guthrie's heart is still, quietly, relentlessly broadcasting. 31 days, no arrest, no confirmed location. One woman, still missing. Before we trace every thread of this investigation and what the evidence actually tells us about what happened on the night of January 31st, if you want coverage that stays with these cases long after the headlines move on, that examines the evidence, the timelines, and the investigative patterns that matter, subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Here, at the Investigation Room, we do not speculate. We follow the documented record. Hit the like button and drop a comment. Do you believe Nancy Guthrie is still alive? And if so, do you think investigators are close to finding whoever took her? Now let's start at the beginning. Because, to understand what is happening on day 31, you need to understand who Nancy Guthrie is, and exactly what happened in the hours before the world knew she was gone. Nancy Ellen Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She has lived in the Tucson area for more than 5 decades, having moved there with her family in the early 1970s. She raised 3 children, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron. Her husband, Charles, died when she was in her 40s, while on a mining exploration trip in Mexico in 1988, leaving Nancy to hold the family together with the particular kind of quiet strength that her children have described publicly in terms that make it impossible to think of her as an abstraction. Savannah Guthrie, the NBC Today show, Conquer, who suspended her broadcasting duties to be at her family's side, described her mother's heart as fragile, and said, "She lives in constant pain. Nancy has limited mobility. She cannot walk 50 yards unassisted." According to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, she requires daily medication that, without it, could be fatal. She is 84 years old, she has a pacemaker, and she was taken from her home in the middle of the night by someone who had been there before. That last detail matters more than almost anything else in this case. The masked figure captured on Nancy Guthrie's doorbell footage did not arrive at her home for the first time on the night of February 1st. The images from the doorbell camera came from 2 separate days. He had been to that property before. He had watched it. He had studied its layout, its cameras, its rhythms. He came back with knowledge he had deliberately acquired. This is not a crime of impulse or opportunity. Whatever happened at that house in the Catalina Foothills happened because someone made a series of planned decisions over a period of time before they ever set foot on that porch with a backpack and a glove and a mask. Here is the timeline that investigators have reconstructed from confirmed evidence and official statements. On the evening of Saturday, January 31st, Nancy Guthrie had dinner with her daughter Annie and Annie's husband, Tommaso Cioni, at their home. Tommaso drove her back to her own residence and dropped her off at approximately 9:48 in the evening. He was the last person to see her. That 12-hour window between 9:48 at night and when her family called 911 around noon the following day is one of the first structural challenges in this investigation. A gap that every investigator in a case like this knows expands the potential. Search radius dramatically with every passing minute. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera went offline. Not because of a technical issue, because someone at the door disabled it. At 2:12 in the morning, an interior camera classified a detected presence as a person. No video footage has been recovered from that moment. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from the iPhone app it had been syncing with. The phone was left inside the house. Everything that happened to Nancy Guthrie happened in that compressed window between 1:47 and 2:28. 41 minutes. That is the entire documented window of the abduction itself. By 2:36 in the morning, something was moving on a back road, approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. A Ring camera mounted at a neighbor's property captured it. A vehicle in the dark, moving away from the direction of her neighborhood, along a route that law enforcement sources described as significant, because it specifically avoids the primary intersections most likely to carry traffic surveillance cameras. The timing is exact. 8 minutes after the pacemaker went silent. Former FBI special agents who reviewed the footage described it as potentially pivotal. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos confirmed on March 2nd that investigators are aware of the footage and actively examining it. He also confirmed that they have not yet been able to identify the vehicle. No make, no model, no plate. The thread is still being pulled, but it has not yet produced an answer. What investigators did produce, 9 days into the investigation, was something that fundamentally changed the public's understanding of what was being hunted. On February 10th, the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department released surveillance images and video footage recovered from the Nest camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door. The recovery itself was remarkable. The recording devices had been removed or tampered with in a way that made the footage initially inaccessible. Working with private sector partners, investigators recovered the video from what they described as residual data located in backend systems. What that footage showed was an armed individual in a mask, gloves, and a black 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, standing at Nancy Guthrie's front door, raising a gloved hand toward the camera before stepping back. In a separate clip, the same masked figure faces the camera holding a flashlight in his mouth, before covering the lens with vegetation. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed that the individual appeared to be armed. The FBI described the suspect as male, approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, of average build. The backpack became one of the most discussed leads in the entire investigation. Sheriff Nanos called it one of the most promising leads in the case because it is sold exclusively at Walmart under the Ozark Trail brand. Walmart provided investigators with purchase records for every Ozark Trail Hiker pack sold across all locations over the preceding several months. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage from local Walmart stores. They worked directly with Walmart management to try to isolate the specific purchase. But by March 2nd, the sheriff told NBC News that the assumption had shifted. Investigators had learned that the backpack squall, exclusive to Walmart as a new item, may not have been purchased there directly. Someone could have bought it second-hand, through eBay or any number of resale platforms, and that avenue was now being examined. One of the most promising leads in the investigation had narrowed in some directions, while opening new complications in others. The suspect's other items of clothing also pointed initially toward Walmart. The face mask, the gun holster described as a $10 holster consistent with items sold at Walmart. The clothing itself. Investigators began systematically reviewing Walmart surveillance footage. A Tucson gun shop owner confirmed publicly that the FBI had approached him and showed him between 18 and 24 names and photographs as part of the effort to identify the individual in the footage. Nobody on that list had purchased a firearm from his shop. The FBI declined to comment. And then, there is the DNA. This is where the investigation has encountered one of its most significant structural challenges, and where the explanation of what investigators are actually dealing with matters enormously. Blood found at the front of Nancy Guthrie's home was confirmed to be hers. That confirmation established beyond any reasonable doubt that she did not leave her home voluntarily. What happened to her on that porch was not something she chose. Additionally, investigators recovered DNA from the property that does not belong to Nancy Guthrie and does not match any of her known contacts. That DNA has been processed and compared against the FBI's national database, a system called CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, which contains profiles from individuals with previous arrests for certain qualifying crimes. The DNA returned 0 matches across more than 26 million profiles. Not a partial hit, not a near match, 0. That result, in investigative terms, means one of two things. Either the person who left that DNA has no prior criminal history that would have placed their profile in the system, or the DNA mixture, because there are multiple biological contributors, is too complex to extract a clean profile from a single unknown individual. Sheriff Nanos acknowledged both realities publicly. The mixed DNA found at the property is being processed by an out-of-state laboratory, and Nanos stated plainly that the results could take weeks, months, or possibly up to a year to yield usable identification. That is not a failure of technology. It is an accurate description of what forensic science actually faces when biological material from multiple people is commingled at a scene. But it means that the DNA pathway, while still considered a viable lead by investigators, is not a pathway that will produce answers on a timeline measured in days or weeks. There is another pathway, and it is one that has never been deployed in a missing persons case at this level of public visibility until now. A device known as a signal sniffer, described by an FBI source as sophisticated FBI technology, was mounted on the skid of a Pima County Sheriff's Department helicopter and deployed in a slow, low-altitude search over the region around Tucson. The purpose is specific: to detect the low-power electronic signal that Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker emits continuously and involuntarily. The pacemaker does not know that its owner has been taken. It does not know that 31 days have passed. It is designed to broadcast a unique device address, a handshake signal. Looking for the paired iPhone it was separated from in the early morning hours of February 1st. That broadcast does not stop. Former FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell explained the key operational constraint to News Nation. The signal has a limited range, which means the helicopter carrying the sniffer technology has to get very close to the pacemaker's actual location to detect it. Raw aerial searching across thousands of square miles of Arizona desert is extraordinarily time-intensive when the target signal has a short reach. This is why the cell tower data became critical. At some point in the investigation, intelligence derived from cell tower records, the towers that devices associated with the case had pinged during the relevant window, pointed investigators toward a specific area. Not the broad expanse of Pima County, which is roughly the combined size of Rhode Island and Connecticut, a specific location in a neighboring county. Investigators directed a partner agency to take the signal sniffer to that location and search for Nancy. The partner agency deployed the technology. They searched, they did not find her. But that searched the fact that it happened at all, with specific coordinates. In a specific neighboring county, tells us that investigators had actionable intelligence pointing in that direction. And when the search returned no confirmation, that location was eliminated from consideration, which is not nothing. In investigations of this scale and complexity, eliminating areas from the map is how the remaining possibility space narrows until something is found. By day 31, the aerial sweep had transitioned from broad coverage of Pima County to more targeted deployments based on refined intelligence. The investigation was not stuck in place. It was moving. What it had not yet moved to was an arrest. And that gap, between the weight of evidence already assembled and the absence of a person in custody, is what drives the central question that this investigation keeps returning to. Who is the man in the mask? The forensic search expert, Dr. Tracy Sargent, who holds a doctorate in psychology and has been involved in between 2,000 and 3,000 missing persons cases. Over the course of her career, has described the behavioral profile of this offender in terms that investigators use when examining what the evidence actually implies about motive and planning. The prior visit to the property, the deliberate disabling of the camera, the specific route taken after these, are not the behaviors of someone who arrived without preparation, but the manner in which the crime unfolded also carries elements that some analysts describe as consistent with an encounter that escalated beyond what the offender originally intended. Dr. Sargent has outlined a scenario in which the offender had a purpose at that property, whatever that purpose was, and the encounter with Nancy Guthrie created a crisis he had not fully anticipated. She was home when he may not have expected her to be. She was awake, or she woke up. She was a witness who could identify him. And in a moment where panic overrides planning, the decision to take her rather than flee may have been driven more by adrenaline than by a calculated abduction scheme. If that is accurate, it has significant implications for the search. A panicked offender operating in darkness without a fully formed plan for what comes next is unlikely to have transported Nancy a great distance. Research and field experience in missing persons investigations consistently show that in nighttime scenarios, actual distance traveled by an offender is typically far shorter than it appears in theory. The physical reality of managing another human being, an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility, without her medication who requires daily care to survive, is an extreme constraint. Carrying someone who cannot walk independently is physically exhausting regardless of the carrier's size or strength. The range of possibility shrinks dramatically when you factor in darkness, panic, physical limitation, and the need to avoid being seen. The cell tower coordinates that sent investigators into a neighboring county are, in the view of some analysts, consistent with exactly that radius. Not hundreds of miles away, somewhere within reach of a vehicle moving through the desert before dawn. The investigation has also produced leads that were pursued and did not result in charges. And those outcomes matter for understanding where things actually stand. On February 10th, a person was detained for questioning following a traffic stop in Rio Rico, Arizona, approximately 60 miles south of Tucson. The Pima County Sheriff's Department and FBI executed a search warrant on a property and vehicle in the same area. By February 11th, the searches had concluded. The individual was released. Sheriff Nanos confirmed that this person was determined not to be involved. On February 13th, a separate operation was conducted at a residence approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. 2 people were removed from that residence. Roads in the surrounding area were closed to the public for approximately 4 hours. No arrests were made. Neither of those operations produced a suspect. But both of them demonstrate that investigators are actively running down leads with sufficient confidence to execute search warrants, which requires establishing probable cause before a judge and following those leads to their conclusions. The family of Nancy Guthrie has been cleared entirely as suspects. Sheriff Nanos stated publicly, and with deliberate emphasis, that no family member is under any suspicion, that all of them have been cooperative and gracious, and that they are victims in this case. He made that statement, he said, because sometimes investigators forget to be human, and kindness matters. The family had been subjected to online speculation that the sheriff characterized plainly as attacks on innocent people. Annie Guthrie's vehicle was seized under a sealed search warrant early in the investigation, and as of available reporting, had not been returned. But that detail exists in the context of a sealed warrant that media organizations have been unable to access. The sealing of warrants in active investigations is legally standard. It does not imply that family members are suspects. The sheriff made that explicit. There are also ransom communications in this investigation that add a layer of complexity without yet delivering a resolution. Multiple media outlets received notes in the first days of the investigation. CBS affiliate KOLD in Tucson received one on February 2nd. TMZ and KGUN received similar communications. The notes demanded payment in Bitcoin for Nancy's safe return. At least one included 2 deadlines, February 5th and February 9th, both of which passed without confirmed communication between whoever sent the notes and the Guthrie family. The FBI confirmed it was taking the communications seriously. Investigators shared the notes with Savannah Guthrie directly. Savannah responded in a public video posted to Instagram, speaking directly to whoever might be holding her mother, saying the family was ready to talk and needed proof of life. In a separate development, a Southern California man was charged in federal court with allegedly making a fake ransom demand via text message, which underscores the investigative burden created by fraudulent communications layered on top of potentially real ones. As of available reporting, the FBI has not confirmed whether any of the ransom notes received by media outlets represent genuine contact from whoever took Nancy Guthrie. Then there is the question of the reward and what it may now produce. On February 24th, Savannah Guthrie announced publicly through an emotional Instagram video that her family was offering up to $1 million for information leading to their mother's recovery. She was explicit about the full weight of what the family was acknowledging. They still believe in a miracle, she said. They still believe Nancy can come home, but they also know she may be lost. She may already be gone. The reward, Savannah later clarified, can be paid in cash. It is available to anyone, including someone with knowledge of the crime, who was not the person directly responsible for taking Nancy. Retired FBI Special Agent Maureen O'Connell noted publicly that if multiple people were involved, if the suspect had help, if someone knew something and stayed silent, a $1 million reward changes the calculus for that person. The FBI tip line, 1-800-CALL-FBI, has received over 40,000 tips in total across the course of the investigation. Following the reward announcement, the FBI reported receiving 1,500 new tips in a short window. That volume requires systematic human processing, and every single tip is worked. Investigators have also been dealing with a parallel challenge that many high-profile cases face, but rarely examine openly: the sheer forensic complexity of the physical evidence exceeding the timeline that public attention operates on. 10,000 hours of surveillance and traffic camera footage have been reviewed. The FBI shifted its command post from Tucson to Phoenix, specifically to process that volume of video material, with a smaller dedicated team remaining on the ground in Tucson. The DNA evidence is being processed by an out-of-state laboratory. The signal sniffer has been deployed both aerially and at ground level in at least one neighboring county. The investigation has transitioned from a saturation response at its peak, involving approximately 400 agents and investigators, to a focused task force of Pima County homicide detectives working alongside FBI agents. That transition is procedurally appropriate. It is not a sign that the investigation is losing momentum. It is a sign that the investigation has moved from the initial evidence-gathering phase into the analytical and identification phase. Those phases require different resources deployed differently. Forensic scientist Peter Valentine of the University of New Haven raised a pointed question publicly that frames one of the open, investigative threads clearly: if people went into that home, and investigators believe they did, to take Nancy Guthrie from that house, there must be physical evidence of their presence there: hair, fibers, trace material transferred between the intruder and the environment of that home. Where is it? The answer may lie in samples currently at an out-of-state laboratory, or it may lie in a renewed forensic examination of the home, focusing on trace evidence rather than biological fluid. Both avenues remain open. Former CIA officer and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder offered a specific hypothesis about the backpack that the suspect was carrying, the black 25-liter Ozark Trail pack that investigators initially described as one of the most promising leads in the case. Her theory, shared publicly, is that the backpack did not contain items for burglary. It contained items to subdue another person: blankets or tarps, zip ties, tape, things to restrain and contain someone who could not walk under her own power. That hypothesis, if accurate, points toward a suspect who arrived with a specific plan for the human being inside that house, not just the property. Others, examining the footage, noted a protrusion from the suspect's jacket pocket that some believe could be a walkie-talkie antenna, while others have suggested it could be a signal jammer, a device capable of blocking wireless signals in a localized area, which would be relevant to how and when the doorbell camera was disabled, and how quickly the pacemaker lost its connection. Sheriff Nanos was direct on March 2nd when asked about the state of the investigation. His statement, as reported by NBC News, was not the language of an investigation running out of leads. He said investigators are definitely closer. He said he has full faith and full confidence they are going to solve this case. He said he personally believes Nancy Guthrie is alive. He acknowledged that there is information investigators are holding that has not been shared publicly, information he described as the kind of thing that would be responsible to release, because it is the kind of information that could lead to solving the case, if handled correctly. He confirmed that the task force is operating every day. That same day, on March 2nd, Savannah Guthrie and her sister Annie and Annie's husband Tommaso walked arm in arm down the driveway of their mother's home toward the memorial that strangers and neighbors and people who have never met Nancy Guthrie have built at the edge of the property. Yellow flowers, yellow ribbons, crosses, prayers. A sign that reads, "Let Nancy come home." A statuette of an angel. Savannah placed her own yellow flowers. She posted a photograph to Instagram with a caption that said, "The family feels the love and prayers from the Tucson community and from around the country," and ended with 3 words, "Bring her home." The card the family left at the memorial read, and these words were confirmed by multiple reporters present that day. "Mama, we miss you so much. Our hearts are broken. We are standing on ash, on scorched earth. But Mum, though we are surrounded by so much darkness and uncertainty, our love burns bright. We love you, Mummy. We miss you so much." That is the weight of day 31. A family standing at the edge of their mother's property, writing to her in a card she has not yet been able to read. A pacemaker still transmitting its quiet, relentless question into the Arizona desert. A masked suspect whose DNA is not in any database and whose face remains unidentified. A vehicle captured on a backroad camera 8 minutes after the pacemaker went silent, still unidentified. A backpack that opened one investigative thread and complicated it at the same time. A signal sniffer that has already narrowed the map by eliminating areas that do not contain what it is looking for. The investigation is active. The task force is working. The forensic laboratory processing continues. And somewhere in the desert, or somewhere closer than anyone has yet confirmed, the answer to what happened between 1:47 and 2:28 on the morning of February 1st is waiting to be found. Someone made a series of decisions that night. Someone went to that house twice before going back a 3rd time with a backpack and a plan. Someone drove a vehicle on a back road at 2:36 in the morning. Someone has been living with those decisions for 35 days. The desert keeps secrets, but pacemakers do not. Cell towers record what passes near them. Cameras capture what moves in their field of view. And the technology that solved cold cases measured in decades. Genetic genealogy, the same science that identified the Golden State Killer after 40 years, is being applied to the DNA evidence in this investigation right now. 31 days in, the most important open question is not what has gone wrong, it is what has not yet been found right. And after 31 days, one piece of information from the right person is still all it takes. If you know something, if something in the early hours of February 1st did not add up, if someone close to you behaved differently, if you saw something and told yourself it was nothing, please contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Every tip matters. Every one is processed. And one of those tips may be the one that brings Nancy Guthrie home. Nancy deserves answers. Her family deserves answers. And the truth is still out there, still transmitting, still waiting to be found. If this investigation has moved you, subscribe to the Investigation Room and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new case. Share this video and keep Nancy Guthrie's name alive. Drop a comment below. Do you believe she is still alive? And do you think law enforcement is closer to an arrest than we know? After 31 days, the search continues.